for joining us today, and hope you have all been enjoying the sessions that, before ours. Looking forward to this today. As you can see, we have an amazing group of women leaders here today. We'll be hearing from Kathleen and Barbara and Cheryl and Debbie. So definitely, ask us questions. We will try and respond to as many as we possibly can. And before we get started, I would love to hear from which city you're joining us from. It's always nice to hear that. So with that, welcome again. As far as introduction, I am Parna, and I am the VP of Brand Marketing for WITI, and also the founder of Brand and Buzz Marketing. I'm coming to you guys from sunny Boston for a change. And a fun fact about me, which is something I've asked the speakers to also share, is that in college, I used to play cricket at a national level. So that's a little bit about me. Kathleen, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Great, that's a great fun fact, Parna. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kathleen Mitford. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at PTC. I'm also joining from just outside of Boston in Holliston, Massachusetts. And a fun fact about me is I met my husband 20 years ago on Match.com. And this was before online dating was cool. So I told my parents we met at an airport, and they didn't know. I didn't tell them to the day we got married, and they'd accepted him that he was an online dating match.
Cool. Barbara? Hey guys, can you mute your mics, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out who that is. Hi, I'm Barbara Clark, and I am the third person who's also in Boston. I'm in the tropical south end of Boston. And geez, fun fact, I didn't know I had to do a fun fact. I wasn't paying attention. I was in a horrendously bad music video in the 80s. And if anyone were to recover that video, I would have to pay you a lot of money, I think. So anyway.
Who's the band?
I have to even think about it. It was an unforgettable band. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. We'll remember, and we'll probably start digging to see if we can find that video. Cheryl, would you like to go next?
Hi, I'm Cheryl Rude, and I'm a director professor for Carnegie Mellon, and I run a Master's in Technology Ventures program for the Integrated Innovation Institute. And let's see, weird fact. Well, I used to race sports cars. So that was always, I drive fast, do not see me on the freeway. Well, most likely you can't see me on the freeway these days, but that's the one strange fact.
Oh, that's really cool. My son is going to be joining Carnegie Mellon in a few weeks, so I'll ask him to stop by and say hello.
Oh, by the way, I'm in Silicon Valley.
Okay, maybe not then. Debbie, would you like to go next?
Sure. I'm in Santa Cruz, California right now. So Cheryl and I are neighbors. Yay, West Coast power. But I actually have my residence in Boston, so I have a dual loyalty there. I am the CEO of Vecna Technologies, which has our headquarters in Burlington, Massachusetts. And we do healthcare information technology for virtual access and registration and administration of healthcare needs. So it's kind of pretty relevant right now as far as people trying to do touchless stuff. Which is crazy to turn the world upside down. I guess a fun fact about me, this is the only thing I could think of on short notice. I'm a cold cereal addict. I don't go to meetings or anything, but if late at night, early in the morning, I have my categories of cold cereal from, your appetizer to your full to your dessert. So if you happen to have the same, you have you have your appetizer, you have your bran flakes, and then you have your Lucky Charms for dessert. So I'm a connoisseur.
Very cool. All right then. See, we all know fun facts about each other that we didn't know before. So that's awesome. So let's get right to it then. You know, obviously, in addition to your fun facts, you're all leaders in your respective industries. And I guess the first question that I would kind of like us to talk about is, how did you get there today? You know, and I'm sure there were bumps and turns that we all had to take in our careers. So I would love to actually hear all your stories. And if you like, I can go first and give you like a little bit about, you know, how I got to where I am. So I came to this country several years ago now with 2 suitcases, a story about a lot of immigrants, I guess. Didn't know anybody, had no network, nobody would give me a job. So after knocking on dozens of doors, one female executive allowed me to get my foot in the door. So I was very grateful to her. Will always remember her fondly. And then very quickly, I realized that I really enjoy technology. And so I kind of entered the world of tech. And very quickly, I also had a seat at the table in the corporate world. And that's where I learned about challenges, corporate cultures, how do you drive teams. And this is coming from India, where I didn't really have exposure to how a company works. But I was very grateful to have a seat at the table and very proud in the beginning when I would be the only woman in the room. And then very quickly I realized that we have to change that. So yes, after about 15 years and more, I think, living in the corporate world, loved what I did, loved tech. And then about 2 years ago, I decided to take the plunge, start my company and become an entrepreneur. So it's been a crazy ride for me coming here, not knowing anybody, to knowing all of you now and have my company. It's something I am so very grateful for. And then the one thing that I think drove me every day for me and my husband, because we had kids as well, failure was not an option. Like, we have to absolutely make it, because we had to support ourselves, we had to support the kids, we had to support our family. So that's kind of my story, now that you know. Barbara, how about you? Do you want to share a little bit about, you speak so many languages. You were one of the first women VC to actually invest in companies with women. Share a little bit about, your journey, please.
Right, and I realized I was a little obsessed with my fun fact, and I forgot to even mention, that I'm a venture capitalist investing in tech, with women and technology companies. So, I think it comes from a combination of, I've always been very interested in tech. My background is not as a technologist, though. I'm an economist. And so I've always been really interested about the interplay between the economy and technology, going back studying, whether it was some initial software programs, or, the impact of manufacturing on the price of cell phones, things like nerd stuff. And so I was always really interested in that. And then I've also been very interested in, seeing more women at the table. And I value women as leaders. And I know that, as everyone probably knows, about 2% of venture capital goes to companies with women on the founding team. And that's absurd. Women do not have only 2% of the good ideas. I would argue we have probably 90% of the good ideas, and the skills and the talents to bring forward great ideas and companies. So that's really how, I got into investing, only in the past decade, but it's sort of a culmination of my experience from, being fascinated about tech, intellectual property, how companies run, and being also very internationally minded. So yeah, that's me.
Oh, that's fascinating. Thanks for sharing. Kathleen, would you like to go next? You obviously have a seat at the table in that room. So,
Yes, absolutely. So I have an interesting background. I went to school for fashion design. So I started my career as a menswear designer in New York, and I did that for 4 years and was implementing a PDM, product data management system, at the fashion company. But I spent so much time on the phone with the technology company telling them what their software should do. They said, "Why don't you come and work for us?" So that's how I got into tech, and I've been in tech longer, 22 years now, than I am in fashion. But being in fashion gave me a really good insight into understanding consumer behavior and consumer needs. So I have had many different tech roles, from being a product manager to implementing to I've been at PTC for over 14 years, where I led their product management and R&D organization, to now as chief strategy officer. One of the things along my journey is, from all the different roles that I've had, none of them are one that I was formally trained for, but being a curious learner and interacting with other, not just women, but other leaders, and understanding best practices has really helped me get to where I am today.
wow, awesome. Debbie? Your background has something to do with space research and technologies, I believe.
Yes, from the time
Cannot
that
hear you.
Can't hear me?
Yeah, right now I can hear. Yes, I can hear you.
It's okay? Okay.
Yes, it's okay right now.
Good. From the time I was young, I had kind of an adventurous spirit, and wanted to be an astronaut, and mostly because I wanted to find places where nobody had ever been before. I would go running on the state park behind our house when I was younger, trying to find a place where you couldn't see anything that humans had touched yet. And so that kind of drove me to MIT to get a degree in aerospace engineering. And that led me to interact with, I was one of like 4 out of a class of 29 that were aerospace engineers, and not a real popular major, as opposed to the hundreds that were computer science. And my junior year, they hired a female faculty. Her name was Professor David Newman, and she brought to MIT a human factors of space engineering, which I am so lucky to have overlapped with her, and to be able to have that exposure, because I just loved it. And that introduced me to kind of the healthcare medical profession, because we really started looking into life support systems, human factors of space exploration, and those types of things. And I was looking at going into medical school when we got some opportunities to apply this new web technology to healthcare. And so at that time, I just had my first child, and I was thinking, well, medical school might be kind of hard with a new baby, so I think I'll start a business. That's a joke, if you get it.
Get it.
At least I could do the business out of my home, which I don't think I could have done medical school, but it basically consumed our lives for probably, it was my first child I think actually we started the business, and we were thinking about having kids, and yeah. So anyway, it was, they came about the same time. So it, grew in our house. It was in our back room, and then it went to our basement as well. And then when it started getting into our dining room, I'm like, all right, get out, we got to go. And so we pushed out and started growing the business from there. But I think, just like Kathleen, I don't feel like I was ever formally trained for a lot of the situations that I was put in. And that's been really interesting. So being the CEO of a company at like 28, and trying to get it off the ground, and working with government. We were born into government contracting, so having meetings with generals and high-ranking military professionals really demanded of me a sense of to really be less feminine than I had normally been, and to create a very serious exterior and try to be very, ultra professional. And I can remember for a lot of my career path and trying to establish that credibility from a technical and professional. At one point, there was a transition of saying, you know what, I think I can bring more of myself to my business. I think I can start to express who I am and feel confidence with that. And that was a turning point for me. And that came to be more like, I think I can smile. I think I can actually like laugh or joke, and still be taken seriously. And that was a good part of my journey. But I really think that the critical thinking skills that I received as an engineer, and the ability to see things from a systems perspective has been really critical for me in approaching healthcare and providing solutions to a very complex ecosystem that I'm working within. So, not to say if I didn't get an invitation to get on a spaceship and go to Mars that I wouldn't seriously consider it. So, just to put that out there to the universe.
Well, there's still hope. You never know. SpaceX is launching people to space. Let's see what happens there. It's a great
Absolutely
story. I appreciate that. Cheryl, so in addition to racing cars, I see that you do something around vineyards. Or was that? Tell us a little bit about that. Look at all these secret lives and career journeys of you ladies here. Tell us a little bit about that. And how did you get from there to where you are today?
Well, let's see. I've always liked to learn. I always like to solve problems, and I like to read. And so when I went through college, I did the thing that typical people who don't know what the heck they want to do. I took 3 majors, and it was English, math, and computer science. So I came out with a very systems perspective and a problem-solving type of personality. And I went into work doing software engineering. And because I had the background of English as well as computer science, they said, oh, you can write the COBOL compiler. So I had the opportunity to work with Grace Hopper and do the DoD for the COBOL compiler many years ago, which tells you how old I am. But then moving on, I always like to help people learn and help people do more. And that got me into management. So I became a leader of compiler products and be able to create new capabilities, solve problems, and always be customer focused. So that was another big learning point for me. And then I went to the bank and was head of systems there, international systems. But while I was there, I recognized I needed something more. And that was the ability to be oriented around marketing and customer contact. And one of the things that I learned from the bank was that you don't always get to choose who you work for, but you do get to choose what you learn. And I went to work for the guy that was absolutely one of the toughest guys in the business. And I had friends say, don't go to work for him. He'll kill you. He's compulsive, works all the time. But I said, I know what I got to do. I have to learn some marketing, and he's the best. And so I went to work for him, and found out why he was so cranky is because he didn't understand systems. And he liked me from a standpoint that he felt I could help him understand. So in the morning, he taught me marketing when the markets opened in New York. And in the evening, I taught him how to do his own email instead of having his admin print them all out. He'd write on them and then give it back to her the next morning. The only problem was that the execs that worked for him started calling me and say, will you stop teaching him? He's getting the email back to me too fast. And but then a situation of values occurred, and my values and the bank's values were slightly different, difficult to make decisions, a very much male dominated environment. And I had the opportunity to go to work for Hewlett Packard, very much a family organization. And I was leading a software group there. And we were becoming very successful with our Unix systems as a result. And the CEO at that time asked me to do a big project for him, which spanned the whole company. And I stopped. And one of the other things I learned was how to make a good ask. And I said to myself, I want to do that job. And in order to do it, I need a master's in business. I cannot be unable to talk to these execs who are very business structured. So I decided I would create an ask that would benefit both him and me, as opposed to just saying, let me go get my master's at Stanford. And so I went in with the barometer, and the barometer was up to this level, I'd stay with the company and do the project. But if it didn't reach that level, I had another opportunity, and I wanted to make it clear that I preferred to stay, but I also knew that I wanted to have a larger career. Well, he was just incredibly great. He always asked good questions. And he said, and I said to him, I know you only do engineering degrees, but I want a business degree. And he listened and listened to my whole rationale. And so I created a group that included Mike Maples from Microsoft, John from Hewlett-Packard, and Steve Wheelwright from Harvard, who was the best process analysis person, and then the CEO of Chevron. And I made them be my advisory team for when I was going through to present each quarter how I was going to solve the problem that John had given me at HP. Worked out great. I got my degree. We moved on this initiative, and it went perfectly. And I loved my time at HP. But as HP started to change, new leadership came in. I found that I wanted, if I'm going to work this hard, I want my own business. So I did. And then I had a good friend at HP who was the dean now at the Silicon Valley campus for Carnegie Mellon. And he said, you know, I want you to come teach people what you're doing and what you did. And so that was how I got into Carnegie Mellon and ultimately the director of this technical ventures program. But along the way, there are things you get interested in. One of the hardest things about software, you can't touch it. You can't touch your product. I fell in love with wine. I could drink my product. I'm very happy at that, to have a product I can really touch and enjoy and makes me feel good about the work I'm doing. But what we did, we applied some of the same reasonings for making our winery very successful. We went from 1,000 cases a year to 30,000 cases a year in 5 years. And we had a very clever approach of our motto and our wine. And that's been fun. And also along the way, I race cars, and also along the way, I have a great husband who I met in Boston. So I'm bifurcated myself. He was the former VP of marketing for DEC before it became consumed by Compaq, before it became consumed by HP. Anyhow, that's a little bit of me. I live here in Silicon Valley in Woodside now, and I have a wonderful dog on top of it.
Excellent, excellent. Well, great story, all of you. So obviously, you know, as you just mentioned, Cheryl, and all of us, you know, we kind of had bumps along the way. We, you know, took different turns along the career journey that we have. What is the one big challenge that you may have faced in your career journey, and how would you, now that you are where you are today, what would you do differently? Kathleen, do you want to start us off on that?
Sure. So I would say one of the biggest challenges that I've had was many years ago. I was in a job that I didn't love, and it was at PTC. As I mentioned, I've been here for over 14 years in a variety of different roles. And I was in a job that I didn't love because I really didn't mesh well with my manager. And, there just was, I wasn't gonna say it was because I was a woman, but I was the only woman on his staff. You know, PTC's been working very hard and increasing the number of women, but back over 10 years ago, we didn't have that many women specifically in the R&D and product organization. So for many years, I reported into him, and I didn't talk to anybody about it. I didn't look for another job. I was kind of a little bit miserable. And this was for really at least, you know, 2 years of my life where I didn't do something about something that wasn't making me, you know, very, very happy. And if I could go back now, I would go back to my, you know, my younger self and say a couple of different things. Why are you staying in a job that's not making you happy? And I stayed at PTC because I love PTC as a company, but there were so many other opportunities that I could have looked into. So that's number one, something I would have done differently. And number two, I should have talked to somebody about it. I should have found a mentor. I should have found another woman executive or even a male executive that was a good ally to say, I think that, you know, there's some challenges here. You know, I was in a role previously before this manager where I had a lot of visibility to the executive staff. I had a lot of visibility to projects. And one of the reasons I wasn't happy is I got buried. So the visibility that I was used to having, it wasn't there anymore, which I was beginning to feel was going to be a hindrance for me as I thought about, you know, future opportunities and growth. And I was actually very lucky that you know, another executive within PTC came and sought me out for a position, a growth position, and I was very glad that he did that. But I should have taken action, you know, myself. And I was concerned that if I talked to somebody, maybe it would get back to him. You know, I was concerned that who's actually going to understand this type of situation that I'm in. But I think it would have helped both me and him, you know, for giving him the feedback on, hey, the way that we're interacting, the way that you're not promoting great talent, you know, is probably not the best approach. So my advice to people would be, number one, if you're in a job that you don't love, don't stay in the job. You know, think about what are the root causes. And for me, the root causes were that interaction with the manager. And I believe some of it had to do because he didn't really know how to interact with women very well. And today there are so many more tools to help managers with that than there were years ago.
Great example. Thank you. Debbie?
Yeah, I think I'll talk a little bit about failure. And so there were, just a couple of years ago, there was a time period where nothing seemed to be going smoothly. Couldn't find the right staff or had some changeover. Had some customers who, you know, terminated for convenience. And there were, you know, some deals that we didn't win, right? And all of those things can feel so detrimental. And as an entrepreneur, you know, you feel like the leader, you are the leader, and you feel like it's personal in many ways. And so I think that it was a good process for me because it helped me to decouple my personal worth with my professional success. And so many times we can get that wrapped around each other. And we need to be very careful that doesn't become, you know, pervasive and too much a part of who you are, your identity as a professional person. You can certainly take pride in that and work very hard at it. But if a certain business deal is not successful, it doesn't mean that, you know, you failed as a person. So anyway, that was a good lesson that I learned. But part of it was also, we used it as a time of investment. And at the time, it seemed almost like a survival instinct. You know, we have, being in business for yourself for, you know, 20 years, you go through some ups and downs, and I can tell you like the years, 2001, 2008, 2000, whatever. And so, you know, that there are cycles to these things, which is helpful to have that perspective. It doesn't make it much easier to go through them though. And in this particular cycle, used it as an investment period of like planting seeds, right? And just like the markets, when they pull back, if you have the cash, you should invest at some point when the markets are down, because with the faith that it's going to go back up. But it's scary because emotionally you want to pull out and you want to become insular and you want to like cut and stick to what you're good at. And it's hard to think about being innovative and pushing yourself when you feel threatened and when you're scared. And so that fear and trepidation is difficult to move forward with. And so you kind of, again, have to decouple that. So, and we have a saying, with some of my older veteran employees, just as long as we stay alive, right? You just have to stay alive and then the next thing will come. And so in this case, I would have gone back and told myself to be more patient, to work hard, to invest, and to be patient. Because now what we're seeing over the last 6 months is that, a couple years of investment and of, really listening to the markets is resulting in almost a tsunami. So now my challenge is delivery, which is a great challenge to have, but it wasn't the same challenge I had maybe 2 years ago. But you just have to be patient through some of those cycles, keep putting in the hard work. The other thing I would say is that don't pull in, something like what Kathleen said, like at the points when you feel like, oh my gosh, I've ruined it, I failed, I'm not good enough. Those are not the times where you want to go and talk with people. Those are not the times where you want to put yourself out there or network or feel like you have a lot to give. But that is exactly the time that you should be increasing your networks. Or if you have networks, you should be increasing them every time so that when you fall on those times, you can reach out to people. But if you don't hide, don't stay inside, go and talk to people. It's very natural. Probably what you're feeling or what you're going through, 1,000 other people have been going through these that are right in your circles. And there are people who have a lot of experience. Just listening to the experiences on this panel is fantastic to feel like you've got company and people will help you gain that perspective to move forward.
Right. No, those are great tips. I love the part where you talked about when the market is down, look for opportunities. I think that's the one thing that I've been seeing through this whole COVID process is the companies that pull back versus the companies that are actually going forward, looking for opportunities, are definitely doing well and will come out better at the other end as well. So I think those are really good tips. Barbara, would you like to go next?
Sure. Advice that I would give myself back then and I give now is that in order to have choices, you need to have options. And too often we sort of settle on one pathway, without doing the work to actually then create all the different options. And I think about this, and this goes a little bit to what Kathleen had said, where I remember being in a job and I really felt like I really didn't see a vision for the future, and I wasn't really enjoying it. And I was looking to get out, but I think I was only creating one pathway because I would look a little bit at another pathway and then stop. And partly this goes to what kind of network do you have? Because what you really need to have is a robust network outside your job, people you can bounce ideas off of, particularly if you're looking to make a change, not just a company change, but maybe an industry change, because it takes work. And, at the time, I was a senior manager at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I really didn't see myself being a partner. At that point, only about 3% of people at my level and above were women. And then you take that, which by the way, Cheryl, I worked on the acquisition of Digital Equipment Corporation by Compaq. I did the intellectual property analysis of that. So small world. But I remember, of that teeny percentage of women, how so few of them were married, had children, and then had a spouse who worked outside the home. I mean, that was like, I had all of those things. And I remember just not being able to see the path forward. Nowadays, I think that, we have so much better networking and connecting that you can actually see different opportunities in front of you and even reach out to people. Whereas back then, I feel like it was really difficult to do. But people still do it all the time because they say, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. Well, there are always other options. It's work to pursue them, but it makes sense in the end. But it just takes work.
Yeah, good point. Cheryl?
Well, it's hard to add more. I think that what has been said has been really quite rewarding. For me, I think there's just a couple of things. I always looked at my life as a journey, and I was always open to considering new paths. You know, I think it was Ellen DeGeneres who had if you get lost in the forest and there's a path in front of you, take it. You know, it's that type of thing. And every now and then I would get lost in the forest. And I remembered one time sitting in a meeting, and I was presenting to the executive group on a new project that I thought was very important and should be funded. And they were trying to keep confined how much money they were spending. And another individual was also presenting that day, and I knew he was lying. And there was a part of me that wanted to say something, but I kind of bit my tongue and I hung back. And I remember having a network. After the session, I went back to my old advisor who I love dearly at Stanford. And I said, okay, you taught me negotiation. I said, what is it what you do when somebody's lying? And he said, make sure your facts are right. Don't back down, support your values, and it'll come back to you. So one other thing that I learned in that process was before you go in and present to somebody, have an ally in that group that you're presenting to, because then you'll have somebody else in the room nodding their head with you. So I thought, okay, I'm going to rework this, because they were still reviewing the budget. And I did go back in, but I had criteria this time. I always have criteria. How will I know I'm doing the right thing? What are the things that will tell me that I'm on the right path? And so I wrote down what my criteria was and made sure I knew I had my data. And then I went with my gut. And I just decided I am just going to somewhere dig in the bottom of my soul and come up with the confidence to stand there and say, I know I'm right. And I ended up ultimately winning. But that first time of losing what you thought might be an opportunity was a real awakening for two things. One, learn what you needed to learn. And two, never give up on your own values and the journey you want to take. No one really knows. I would never have said that I got to where I'm at today because I had a clear path that this was what I was going to do, but I love what I do. And I think that's important for everybody, is to love what you do. I love the students I work with. I learn every day from them. Something comes up, I'm always excited about what they're doing and the ways in which they become creative to pivot and keep pushing the idea of a new business creation. So I would say, be prepared to learn, be prepared to stand on your 2 feet, stand your ground. There was one exec there one time that when this guy presented some numbers, the exec, and I'll just give you the example, it was the exec claimed a certain percentage of revenue was going to come in. And this exec that happened to be sitting next to me said, well, gee, I just read in Time magazine that that whole market is collapsing, and at best it will never be more than 10%. And I looked over at him like, where did you get that information? And the guy up front just kind of went, kind of stalled. And then he turned to me and he said, what do you think? And I said, I don't know where you got that information, but I know these stats are the right stats. And here's my background. Here's the evidence. And he looked at me and smiled. He says, okay, let's continue. Afterwards, the meeting, I went over to him. I said, what were you thinking? And he goes, I just wanted to see if somebody could be enough backbone to be convinced on what they were doing to move forward, because then I know I can support that individual. So think about that. Be factual, but be confident in what you've worked on.
Yeah, no, I think that's really great example. I think for me, it was when I joined the corporate world, and like I said, you know, I had my seat at the table. I personally thought, if I work really hard, everything will work out. Mm-hmm. And very quickly I realized that working 20-hour days wasn't really gonna do it for you. So my lesson learned was that I really should have looked for sponsors and mentors, because being an executive for the first time, having a seat at the table, you need people, you need allies, you need people to kind of help guide you. So when I was thinking about starting my company, I spoke with, I don't know, like 20, 25 entrepreneurs at least, to kind of get their input, learn from them, so that some of the so that I don't make all the mistakes a new entrepreneur would make, you know. So my lesson learned was have allies, have mentors who can actually, you know, help guide you. So so yeah, I think we all, you know, have learned so much as part of our journey. And if we could do things differently, like we all described, you know, there are things that we would tell our younger selves not to do or do more of. So I'm looking at a lot of the questions that are coming in. Maybe let's look at this. Christine is asking, how do you keep up visibility while working from home? I'd like to expand a little bit, because, you know, as individuals, especially women leaders or women entrepreneurs, or just women professionals in general, I feel that we are often shy about putting ourselves out there, you know. It's more about, oh, let me be behind the scenes, you know, I don't have to be visible, and I don't, you know, let me just work hard. But I feel that all of us, you know, on the panel today, we've probably had to play some kind of a role to make ourselves visible to the team, to the industry, what have you, so that we get to the point where we are today. So I'm wondering if you guys have any suggestions or tips for us on, you know, how do you drive visibility, especially now when you're not able to interact in person, but we're all interacting over here. There's 131 of us getting to know each other. So that's step one. You guys have joined us here, so that's part of building your visibility. So would any of you want to kind of jump in? Kathleen, Sharon, Debbie, Barbara?
Sure, I can start. And I think when we talk about visibility, there's different types of visibility. There's visibility up and there's visibility down. And there's different ways of managing the visibility, you know, based upon, you know, your visibility as a leader. You can't walk down to, you know, at PTC, we hit floors and the whole R&D team was on one floor. You just go down and, you know, talk to everybody. So there's visibility with your team that reports into you, and, you know, maintaining that connection with them. But then there's also visibility up the leadership, which for me is I report into the CEO and then to the board. And today I'm going to start first about managing visibility up, because with managing visibility up, I use the same tactics that I would do in the office. Unfortunately, PTC is a very meeting driven culture, you know, probably like most of you. My calendar from 7:30 in the morning to 6 at night is, you know, is back to back meetings. And the way that I would make sure I got enough time with not only our CEO, but the rest of the executive leaders is understanding what are the most important initiatives for the company right now. What are the things that they care about? Because when you need visibility with somebody that's, you know, higher up or an important ally for you, you need to make sure that you're adding value to them as well. So I maintain visibility by understanding what are the most important topics at that very moment for my boss and board, and then also for my peers, what are the things that they care about. And typically one of the things I'll do is I'll shoot an email. I'll see what I do with the CEO. I'll shoot him an email once a week, once every 2 weeks. Here's these 10 topics that, you know, I know he cares about, brief status update, but then say, I'd like to meet with you on this. Is that cool? Because you also want to be respectful of other people's times and not overload them. So I'm maintaining visibility by, you know, connecting with him one-on-one in a written form, but then also making sure that I get FaceTime at least every 2 weeks on a one-on-one basis versus in a larger group. And then for visibility, things that's been really, I think one of the things that's been really great. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. One of the things that's been really great about maintaining visibility with my team, which the team is a global team, is we've started to do coffee every Monday morning and socials on Thursday afternoon. We used to have socials in the office from 3:30 to 5, and they're optional for people, but it's really brought a connection to my global organization because we were very connected with the Boston team, or the Israel team or the India team. But now with these coffees that can, no matter where time zone, we try to do it in a time zone that works for everybody. Those who are not in our headquarters have felt more of a connection, I'd say not only to me, but to the broader organization.
Yeah, we have done TGIF parties ourselves. We find that being relaxed with a glass of wine, sitting on your patio in a Zoom call is still comfortable because we all know each other, we laugh, we joke, and it's part of a group that we're all trying to adjust to a hybrid environment now as we're going forward. And so we're all learning from each other. So we allow an hour each week for just sitting there and saying, how are you doing this? Or what are you doing? And somehow with the comfort of like a patio or a deck or a place where it's kind of your snuggle place, you're likely to talk about things more and be more out there, as opposed to in a meeting, you tend to hang back, things like that. Another thing that we do to make it easier is that we open up all the mics so that it's almost natural in the way that you talk together. And it isn't an act-knack kind of approach where I talk and then stop and then you talk, and then it's more natural. And so to keep it natural is really important. And then I have an open door. So every week there's a time where my door is basically as if it were, you come into my office where I work at campus and you can stop and talk to me. And it's almost like a hallway chat, because you can't escape having a hallway chat. There are good things that happen. You don't want to make big decisions in a hallway, but you do want to have the opportunity to hear how people are doing. And so I think an open room type of thing is really important. I think Zoom has done a great job in enabling a more natural environment than we've had in the past. And it allows us to share in multiple dimensions, not just one. So those are some of the tricks we've been doing.
Awesome. Barbara?
I was going to sort of amplify something Kathleen had said in her strategy, which
Sure.
is to message people and try to meet in person, because the messaging and providing content. I was recently listening to a podcast that they interviewed the CEO of Basecamp, which is, a productivity tool many of you may have used. And he was talking about how they really try not to have meetings. They try to sort of push people, to really think about the problem they're solving, what they want to accomplish, to put it down, and then to sort of communicate sort of asynchronously. Because I think we've all seen the situation where you're in a meeting, somebody presents information and you're like, wait, I wanted more time to think about that. Is this like this other thing I did? And it's just very respectful. And so, and people are always trying to meet with me. And it's like, oh, hey, I'd like to pick your brain about something. And I'm like, well, send me the brain picking first, because I don't want to get on some call and realize there's no relevance here. Plus, I meet people all the time and I forget sometimes if it's been a couple of months and we haven't interacted. But if I go back to my, my emails and my documents, and then it refreshes, I'm like, yes, this is what we were working on. This is what we talked about. So I would just emphasize, writing, the written word is not dead. And I would use that.
I agree with you 100%. I don't allow a meeting to get established as opposed to a coffee hour, but a meeting
Yes.
without an agenda, and especially who's got what outcomes and who's going to be accountable.
Right. Debbie, anything to add to that?
Oh, I love what you're saying. I'm actually learning a lot. And I would say, kind of riffing off of, what's already been said. If you're trying to get visibility with somebody who's busy or a superior or something like that, do your thinking ahead of time. And so like what Barbara was saying with picking your brain, that's great. But if you could have thought of these yourself, like think of them yourself, like even if it's not in a meeting, but if it's in an email, there's so many emails that go out and say, here's the problem. And then everybody who's CC'd on that email has to now think about that problem. And there may be enough information in there. There may not be enough information. There may be if there's not a recommendation, then everybody has to go through the process of analysis and recommendation. And until we get to the point of discussion and decision, right? And so that's the thing that I'm trying to push my team towards more, and myself, is to say, and it's kind of selfish to say, if I send this email, will I get 3 more back, or will this solve it and be done? Because I cannot handle another email in my inbox, right? We're all trying to reduce our amount of time that we spend doing email. My daughter asked me, Mom, what do you do for work? And I was like, I do email. That's my job. And it doesn't matter what job you're doing. If it's all on email, you're gonna hate it, right? And so when I look through my inbox and I say, okay, if I put additional information in, or if I take one more think about what they're going to respond to me, what would they need? Or if I think, here's what I think is the solution, and maybe if I put that out there, we can get even one more step further, and then we can close out the stream and make everybody's the most efficient use of time. So just think that next step further. So I love what Cheryl's been saying about going into talking with people and being so prepared and having a couple of options and outcomes that she wants, and how she stacks her deck so she gets what she wants. I think that can happen with all of our interchanges. If you just think a little bit further, Kathleen saying, what does that person want? What does that person expect of me if I'm reporting to them? And how can I, further their agenda? Because in the end, I'm hired as for my customers or as an employee to further somebody else's agenda. And if I'm not providing that value, why are they paying me? To be conflict oriented, to tell them they're wrong, to make more management issues, to fill up their inbox? That's not the kind of visibility I want. I want to be seen as somebody who's really contributing and adding value and helping them achieve their goals as well.
No, I think those are really good points. I may just add one more kind of a different perspective, maybe. If you're looking for visibility, let's say because you want to, if you're going through a career transition or you're looking for a job, for example, right? I think this is a perfect time, this virtual world that we live in, this is unfortunately, the COVID is really heartbreaking. Our heart goes out to, all the people affected by it. But there's also a silver lining, if you want to look at it, this virtual community. So if you know which organization you want to join, or you're looking to build your visibility and expertise in a certain area, always look for, where are these events happening? Are there networking that's happening? And one of the things that we're finding, because especially from a WITI perspective and also from my client's side, we are hosting multiple events a week via Zoom. And this is working really great for startups, especially because we are now able to reach, much broader audience. People are joining us from Asia and Europe, and so we are not kind of tied to the room, like not in Boston, 30 people in the room, but we can actually expand the reach. So I would say, look for opportunities to join virtual meetings and see if you can connect with the organizations or the people that you are hoping to connect. And also, you will also be specifically building visibility to a specific goal. So that's kind of my 2 cents to add to that. We are kind of running, we're about what, Fiona, a few more minutes left, right? 5 minutes. Why don't we wrap with one last question for each of us? if you were to give a tip to a budding entrepreneur, a budding leader, what would that be that they can actually walk away with? And your tip could be related to, you know, your expertise, let's say. So Cheryl, for you, for example, if it's a tip for, you know, students or early entrepreneurs, what would it be if you want to start?
Okay, well, I would say be ready to learn and take action. Don't sit back. We have got to build our confidence, and it's like Dumbo's feather. If I could give everybody Dumbo's feather, I would be very happy. I don't know how many of you know the story of Dumbo, but he thought he couldn't fly until the little mouse gave him a feather that gave him confidence to fly. And then one day when he couldn't find the feather, the little mouse said, but you've been flying all along. And I think that's the best thing for me with entrepreneurs is let people fly, let people learn. And failure is not bad. Failure is learning. If you're not learning, my ski instructor told me, if you're not falling, Cheryl, you're not learning. So do that, learn, and keep your energy focused on where you're going on your journey, not on one end point. Don't be a position, be who you are.
Great point. Kathleen?
Those were all great tips from Cheryl. Kind of building on that, I would say, number one, use your voice. We all have voices, you know, use your voice. Going back to the being visible, you know, be visible. When you're invited to meetings, when you're invited to networking events, show up so people know who you are and what you have to say. The second thing would be ask for what you want. Oftentimes as women, we think, oh, if I do a great job, somebody's going to notice me and I'll get that promotion or they'll think of me for this role. You got to be your biggest advocate. So, you know, make sure your boss knows where you want to go in your career. Ask for the raise, ask for the promotion, and ask for the steps as to how you're going to get there. And lastly, I would say, don't be afraid to take chances. You know, I mean, all of us, I think on the panel have taken chances at different things and gotten to a place where we're happy and confident.
Good point, good point. Barbara?
Advice I give to everyone all the time is whenever you're offered a position or whether it's a job position or if you're an entrepreneur and you're raising money and somebody makes an offer for your company, whatever it is, always reject everything and come back with some sort of thing about how I really appreciate that, but I was really expecting more. These are some of the things I bring to the table. Even if you love the offer and think it's fantastic, you have to realize, you have to get it in that mindset of like having people expect more of you and sort of a little bit like has been said, you know, elsewhere, like advocate for yourself. So always reject it obviously in a very nice and polite way and set their expectations higher for you. I have routinely said this for years and it pays off. And I remember connecting with somebody decade after I told her to do that. And she said she did that at every raise. And I told her I should get a commission, but you know, maybe, you know, I told her make a donation in my name.
Good point. Debbie?
I wish I'd heard that advice a long time ago, Barbara. And Kathleen, you stole mine. But the ask part, I think, is I'll just give a little like to that one and add on to it. And so I think part of it also is to have confidence in yourself. I've talked to a lot of women entrepreneurs who may have co-founders who are men, people who have started their businesses with their husbands or other things. And sometimes they will back off. And I've heard people say, I wish I just trusted my gut. Like I knew I should have done something, or we should have this or that, but I didn't speak out or do something. So it's kind of the same theme of you have it inside of you. Also, don't be afraid of where your journey takes you. So I wanted to be an astronaut. I'm not an astronaut. Am I upset about that? not really. Like, I really liked where my life has taken me. And kind of riffing off of Cheryl, that, you know, it's your journey. What is your journey giving you? Follow the energy that is positive. Make a scary change. If you're excited about where that path leads, it's also could be uncertain or scary or a little risky. If that's where you find the energy of where you should be going, follow that, or whatever you call energy. But I think as you reach those decision points, you'll probably start to feel that tug, and it's okay if it's scary, but don't let it pass you by, or don't let too many of them pass you by.
No, that's really good. And my tip would be, if you want to be an entrepreneur, jump in with both feet. Don't be scared. Take a risk. Having done that, I wish I had done it sooner, you know, because I wouldn't go back to my previous life. I think I just love what I do. And I think just having spoken with, you know, the entrepreneurs before I started my company, it definitely helped me and my team. So I'm very grateful to all of them for their time. So anyway, I know we can continue this conversation for hours, but our time is up. Thank you so much, Kathleen, Cheryl, Barbara, and Debbie, for joining us. It's been very, very inspirational. And guys, I hope you found it helpful and inspirational. Thanks for your questions, and I hope we all stay connected. And if you guys have any questions for us, you know how to reach us. Go to LinkedIn, find us, and chat. Enjoy the rest of the summit, and I'm sure we'll be chatting in another session via Zoom. Thank you again. Stay safe.
Thanks, Parna, for
Thanks
inviting
very
us all.
much,
Thank
Parna.
you.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Bye.
Nice to see you. Okay, you too, Cheryl. Bye-bye. I'm Ann Ripentish. All right. Bye for now.